Okay, for part 5. I'm going to kick my tripod, and luckily it's where it's supposed to be. So for part 5, I really feel like this needs a little color. We have some blue up here, and that looks alright. But I don't think this has a lot of strength. So what I want to do is strengthen this area, and I'm going to try to get the smallest brush I can find. I might have to dig deep for that. I'm in such a tight space here that it's kind of hard to find stuff. So that's one of my little cheap Walmart brushes that I bought. And they really don't do too bad, except I think this particular one is the one that the first time I used it, this whole piece fell off. So I just hot glued it back on. You can see where it has some really fine end on it. Now this is where I can take this blotchiness over here and really turn it into something a little bit more. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break into my yellows. And I realize you guys are limited on cake colors that you have, but you can still do a lot just with mixing. And I think you guys know considerable amount about mixing. So, but I'm going to get some really strong yellow here. And you can go with a bright yellow or one that's a little darker. It doesn't really matter that much. I'm trying to saturate my brush. And I'm going to come in here and see what I can do. Now here's the thing. You're going to be tempted to keep putting it on there because you don't see a lot right away. But just remember, if we contrast this yellow with a dark area, it'll show better. And I'm coming into some of these areas that I left white because this yellow is going to show, because remember, watercolors are transparent. So what's underneath is going to show through. So if you left a few little lighter spots in through here, your yellow is going to seem much brighter because your white paper is showing through. Okay, if you try to do it on top of this dark brown, you're not going to see quite as much of it. So don't let that frustrate you. I think I prefer this. It's more of a rich yellow. This one works okay on white. We don't have a lot of white left on this picture, so I'm going to work with what I have. And that's the thing you got to remember too when you're working with, especially working with watercolor. It's not like acrylic where you can just go over top of it and kind of block out what you've already done if you don't like it. With watercolor, I always call it the least forgiving of the painting mediums because you're usually, if you go too heavy with something, you're stuck with what you've got. Now, if I get some of this yellow a little too bright in these wider areas, that's okay because I can come back in there and put some darker spots in there. See, I think like right in here, this looks very mechanical. You can see this. This area looks very mechanical. I put a bunch of orange dots in there that are kind of spread out evenly. that's just not good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of hit here and there throughout this area to make it look more natural and a little less contrived. Okay. Why not get a touch of orange in here too? Just kind of spread it through. So this area that I said was kind of mechanical looking, what I'm going to do is I think I'm going to grab a little bit of green. And I'm going to tone it down. See, I'm mixing my green in with my oranges here. And remember, they're kind of across from each other. Green and red are across from each other in the color wheel. So that kind of neutralizes my green a little bit, so it's a little more natural, not so bright. I'm just going to come in here a little bit and break up this mass of orange dots that I did. It doesn't look that natural. And remember too, like, for what we're doing, I don't know if you would necessarily buy a frame for it, but if it turns out really nice, you would want to frame it. And when you buy a frame or a mat, it's going to cover your edge, just like when we cut our own mats. So you don't want to do too much detail on the very edge, because it's going to be wasted when you mat it anyway. So in this area, I've got these kind of brown splotchy spots, and they're not very well defined. They're just splotches. So I'm going to come in with a color that's maybe a little different, and I'm going to just break this up a little bit with my fine brush. More texture. So now, instead of looking like big brown blotches, you can look at it and go, hey, wait a minute, there's some kind of other shapes involved with that whole area. So these areas that were once just blotches now are starting to develop a little bit of feel to them. I'm not painting actual leaves, I'm not painting actual stalks, but just putting some different faint, subtle shapes in here. It's giving you that feeling that there are objects with shapes rather than just blobs of color. I think I'll bring a little, okay, here on my previous segment, I put some green in here, and it looks very blobby. We want to break that up some. So I'm going to get like a gray, I think. And I'm going to just kind of make some markings in here. And I don't like the way those are showing up. They're not really contrasting the green much, so I'm going to go with like a red brown. And because it's a contrasting color with the green, I'm just going to come in here and kind of break that green up a little bit, and then I'll bring the brown out in on its own a little bit too. And I think you reach a point where while you're painting, you'll kind of see some of these things when you're layering them over top of each other, and one day a light will go on and you go, okay, I see something happening here landscape wise. Like I see that looks like a clump of weeds, or that looks like a clump of bushes, without me painting every single blade of grass. So I'm just using the very tip of this brush to touch these areas and give it some really textural feelings. Now, you'll find that I do when I'm painting something like this, and I'm trying to develop it, I don't usually have a specific plan as to like, okay, I'm going to make this sky particularly just like this, and I'm going to go just like this and just like this. Things kind of just morph as they go. So you will see me go back and forth once in a while because I'm looking at this background here, okay? And I'm thinking, okay, I have two hills here. I have one kind of here and I have one back here. And I think what I want to do with this one back here is I want to make it kind of complement the greens in here. Like it's maybe, you know, it could be a pine forest or something like that. So I'm going to get a bigger brush. And I'm going to go with kind of a greenish gray. This one actually on the end here looks not too bad. Now, like I said, I realize most of your palettes have like 10, 12 colors in them. So, you know, you got what you got. And now this is a gray, and it looks like it's got some green in it. I might add a touch of green just to make sure. Now, I want to kind of test this because I don't want it to be like bright. Too bright or too dark? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I've rinsed most of the water or most of the paint out of my brush, and I want to wet this background a little bit. Just this outer plane here. I'm going to take some of this green that I made. Just kind of come through here. Now notice how I'm keeping this horizontally oriented. I'm not doing like I'm doing grass or something like that, okay? By keeping it horizontally oriented, it shows us that it's in the difference, in the distance. And the fact that it's really wet, helps give the indication, it spreads the color a little bit and helps give the indication of, okay, there's stuff growing out there, but we don't know exactly what it is. It's in the distance because we want to keep it soft. But see, now we have something a little more on the green side to complement the cooler, greener colors over here and kind of balance it out a little bit. And right now we have kind of a no man's land here, and we'll fix that too. What I'm going to do is I think I might make it a little more on the yellowish side because I got some yellows in here. And I'm not going to make it bright yellow because, you know, you're not going to walk out in a field in the late summer or whatever and see a bright, totally bright yellow field unless it's covered with goldenrod. So I'm going to come out in this area here. I'm going to wet this down, and I get a little bit of yellow. So I'm just going to kind of take the yellow and trail it out into here a little bit. Get this brighter yellow here. Let's see what happens. See, that's a little much, so I'm going to wipe it with my finger, go back to my earthier yellow. That's kind of strong over there, but I don't mind it so far. I can go back in with darks. But notice how I'm still keeping things kind of flat and smooth out here to distinguish from this over here. And I'm actually not liking this yellow, so what I can do is I can come back and I can kind of wipe some of this. Okay, and that softens it up quite a bit right there. Now in this area out here, if I want to add texture, and I'm not even presuming that I'm done with this part yet, but I'm developing things, okay? In this more yellow area here, I want to add some texture to it, but first I'm going to go back in on this area back here and add a little bit more green, or like the gray color, because I just think it needs a little bit more to distinguish it from this other side. And I'll keep a scrap nearby so you can kind of test your colors first, but so let me move to the side here. Being left-handed, it's kind of rough sometimes getting the right angle that I can both show you and do it right. So I'm going to try to keep like thin, just thin strips here. And again, I'm trying to make sure that I don't become too mechanical with it. I try to lift my brush here and there. I try to hesitate with it, so you know the brush stroke should stay horizontal, but you can still leave gaps. So now we have a feeling of soft, distant plants of some kind or other. I think I'm going to come back in with more green over here. In fact, while I'm at it, see how that's kind of running with the water still? I am going to make it so we have kind of a forest over here. Now the key to this is you want to keep it soft, because if your lines become too sharp and too hard, it's going to pull it forward, and we want this to be in the distance. So it's a soft green, it's toned down with a little bit of red. And the fact that it's not very bright and it's kind of soft pushes it back, as opposed to this that has some harder colors and more texture to it. Okay, so work with that, and I'll see you with part 6.